I'm Nicole, welcome to fashion class. This is gonna be a two-part video, and I like to break it up like this because sometimes I feel like we just wanna watch something really specific. So in the first video, I'm gonna talk about the background of the 70s dress for success movement, where it came from, what it was reacting to, as well as key literature, social figures, and designers. Once you have this background, part two, the second video, all about the new era of dress for success, will make a lot of sense. Please register for my class and subscribe. At this point, in the end of April 2023, we are a seminar. I'm pretty new to this whole consistent uploading YouTube video thing, but I would like to make this more of a stadium. Thank you so much, and also please like because it apparently helps the algorithm. Anyways, let's talk about 70s dress for success movement. What did the 70s dress for success look like? The 1970s dress for success movement emphasized a conservative and professional style of dress that was intended to project competence, credibility, and authority in the workplace. For men, this typically involved a suit and tie with a focus on traditional patterns like pinstripes and herringbone. The suit was tailored to fit very well, with clean lines, streamlined silhouette, accessories such as a leather briefcase, a watch, a tie. For women, the dress for success aesthetic was more varied, but still emphasized a professional and conservative style. They were encouraged to wear dresses, skirts, trousers, and tailored suits, which was a big change at the time. There was a great focus on work from this style, but I think from a cultural standpoint, these professional ideas carried into other scenarios and lifestyles. For example, there was some fusion with the boho hippies into dress for success. There was some more feminine, elevated glamour, and I mentioned this to kind of get us to expand our concept of a movement. They all still embody this value of self-presentation. I'll get into this more, but it's very relevant when we think about what today's version of dress for success is like. What was the dress for success movement reacting to? In this time, there were three major things that were happening at once: the women's liberation movement, the growing interest of personal branding, and a time of great economic uncertainty. The women's liberation movement at the time meant women wanted to break through the glass ceiling. We hear this term a lot, and it was actually created in the 70s. It refers to an invisible glass ceiling that prevents women from advancing into higher positions in the corporate world, even if they had the necessary qualifications and experience. The term suggests that even though we're able to see through the glass ceiling, we're never able to really break through. Since then, the term's been applied to a lot of different areas beyond the corporate world, like academia and politics. So in the 70s, as more women were trying to enter the workforce, they began dressing in a conservative manner that definitely took inspiration from the male concept of professional workwear. It was a way to counter some of the biases and stereotypes women felt in the workplace, like not being taken as seriously or sexualized. A second movement that prompted the dress for success era was a growing interest in personal branding. During the 1970s, there was this realization about the importance of projecting a positive self-image to your professional environment and the world. One of the main reasons this was so important was because of the rise of the service sector and the decline of the manufacturing industry. As a result, people began seeing themselves as a product that needed to be marketed and sold to potential employers or clients. This led to an increase on building a personal brand that could differentiate individuals from their competitors and position themselves as experts in the field. At the same time, advances in technology and communication made the importance of branding clearer. For example, the advent of the television and the proliferation of advertising campaigns. The third movement that prompted the dress for success era was the economy. The United States experienced a combination of high unemployment, high inflation, and slow economic growth, which came to be known as stagflation. There was a departure from the post-World War II era of economic prosperity and growth. One of the main factors contributing to the economic challenges of the 1970s was the oil crisis of 1973. This is when OPEC imposed an oil embargo on the United States and other nations in response to their support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War. This led to a sharp increase in oil prices, which in turn caused inflation and slow economic growth. This economic uncertainty propelled a wake-up call to take work seriously and show up professionally because there's a lot of people who need jobs. Where did the dress for success style move from? The dress for success movement was in many ways a reaction from the counterculture of the 1960s and early 70s. It didn't see the anti-establishment mindset as something helpful or sustainable. It was seen too idealistic and extreme. To this dress for success movement, the hippies were kind of seen as a movement branding peace and love, ending social injustices, turned into escapism with no real path forward. The dress for success movement was kind of like, hey, we need to get ourselves in gear because we aren't going to have the power to fix our institutional problems, or there won't even be institutions because our country has crumbled. I actually just finished a video about hippies of the 60s as as well as one comparing them to the 70s, so definitely check that out if you want more background. In general, the culture of the hippies was seen as too casual and unconventional for the workplace. When you think about it, the style is super eclectic and individual. But at work, there's this concept that if you're trying to do something as a unit, you want some sort of mutual understanding. There's more of a uniformity, which can look more like a little bit of a uniform, more consistent with everybody who's there. So Dress for Success was really a deliberate detachment, departure from the hippie mindset, ideas, culture. Instead, it was intended to help individuals reach a particular goal by dressing in a way that projects professionalism, competency, authority. It was seen as a way to gain a competitive edge in the world of work. Literature defining the decade. One of the most influential books that helped define this Dress for Success movement was by John Malloy. He wrote it in 1970, but it was published in 75. There was also a woman's version that came out in 1977. And the book provides detailed advice on what men and women should wear in business settings. Malloy conducted extensive research to determine what kinds of clothes were most likely to be perceived as professional. His recommendations were very specific. They had detailed guidelines, everything from suits to shoes to jewelry, everything. It is worth noting that the book received criticism later on, especially because it has kind of a narrow concept of what success looks like. It doesn't really account for any nuances or create a fundamental framework for people to create their own version and style for what success looks like to them. Key social figures of 1970s Dress for Success. Social figures become so iconic because they represent a movement at large. They represent the culture, they embody it. Some of the key social figures for the 1970s include Lauren Hutton. Hutton was a model and actress that embodied the natural, understated style of Dress for Success. In the 70s, she signed the biggest modeling contract that had ever existed with Revlon Cosmetics, so she was a big influence. She often wore tailored blazers, trousers, and simple dresses. Diane Keaton. Keaton is an actress who had a very iconic 1970s menswear tailored style. Her signature looks included tailor suits, fedoras, ties. Also, she's just been in so many films, I'm sure you guys recognize her. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, the famous first lady of JFK. She also had a relationship with Vogue a little bit before that, so she's been thinking about fashion. Now, not a lot of young people know that she was remarried in the late 60s. That's where the name Onassis comes from. And of course, she was a big fashion icon in the early 60s especially, and that carried into and was re-emphasized in the 70s. She was known for her classic, sophisticated style, her use of tailored dresses, trench coats, pearl necklaces, all aligned very well with the Dress for Success value of classic, credible self-presentation. Marissa Berinston. Berinston was a model that epitomized the glamorous side of Dress for Success. Again, as a movement, not the specific workwear typology. Her wardrobe was full of high-end pieces like silk, fur. This was the high-quality, feminine, glamorous presentation. She is the idea of your best foot forward, the glamour side, the femininity, and we'll see this with some of the designers. Key designers for 70s Dress for Success. I have to mention YSL. YSL was really ahead of the whole movement of pantsuits for women. This began from the Le Smoking in 1966, where he was the first to design and get attention for a woman's suit. He was against the grain, coming at it from an androgynous point of view. Now, because he was really out of the norm with gender norms, I think he completely paved the way for pantsuits in general to be more normalized. Without YSL, it may have taken much longer to get to the point where women were wearing their own versions of pantsuits at work. Now, incoming Calvin Klein, here is a quote from him from a 1977 article. 10 years ago, a woman wore pants as a way of showing she's daring and secure in herself. Now, it's no longer necessary. Women have the security and don't need to display it. Now, women want to look very feminine and soft. So, Klein leaned into feminine professionalism. He appreciated the inspiration of successful workwear, but compared to YSL, did not merge out of a certain type of gender norm. And we see that with the silhouettes. Diane von Furstenberg. This was the birth of her iconic wrap dresses. And it's really interesting. They had the spirit of Seven's boho hippie with the bold patterns and colors, but reframed for Dress for Success. It was simple, soft, feminine, and still professional. Halston. Halston was a very key designer because he added some glamour. He really thought about the fundamental value of self-presentation, this theme in the 70s, but reworked it to include a softness, draping. The same article, the 1977 article, he says, "Remember, we're all wearing signs. The way we dress lets people know where our head is at. that all the time. And the modern woman is smarter than we think. She thinks out her clothes and dresses as she wants. If she wants to look orderly to blend in during the day, she does. And at night, if she wants to look attractive, available, provocative, she does. Never in history has there been more offerings at every price level for women to make their choices. And I love when I can do this. I'm actually wearing a Halston jumpsuit now. Let me show you. So the magic of Halston really came from women in motion. That's why Sarah Jessica Parker was spinning so much in her Halstons at the 2010 American Woman Met Gala theme. Notice the draping and the softness coming from the chiffon. It's very elegant, very true to his philosophy. That was a general background. I really want to ask you guys, did these points get you thinking? Before I upload part 2, before you watch part 2, were you able to make any kind of connections and a recontextualized version? I really hope you enjoyed this though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.